I love vector games. I have always loved vector games. To me, when in a day when graphics were so important, you would look at the home consoles like your Atari. I knew about the other consoles, the television, ColecoVision at some point. Commodore 64 was in there. You know, after all the Pong, Telstar, you know, that Coleco, all of that stuff. After all of that, graphics was such a big deal, and at first you didn't understand. Well, why wasn't Frogger on the Atari like Frogger in the game room? And you know, back then Frogger those were graphics. Those are great graphics, and you know what? They were, because they were just enough. They were just enough to give you an idea of it, but it didn't consume the entire game like a lot of graphics do today. Comment whichever direction the comments are, and I welcome that. I will respond to comments. I always liked the gameplay, what I guess people would call the mechanics of the game. And to me, that was the cool thing. It was more cool, the gravity that was sort of built into Asteroids. Or even the one, I can't remember that, Space Duel or something, where you had the sun in the middle and there was gravity. So you not only had the inertia of the thrust in space, but then you had the little sun in the middle. Those games were fun to me, even though I wasn't very good at them, because how they moved, how you had to react to them, it was cool. It was that energy to it. To me, how the game functioned was just as interesting, was just as fascinating, and there was something almost free about the look of a vector game. The look of Asteroids, of Battlezone, of Tempest, they looked so cool. And in a world where they looked kind of like the Saturday morning cartoons, you know, it's like everything just sort of looked like the Smurfs. You know, and that's even really late for me. I think Smurfs, I think I was in high school when the Smurfs came out. What was I talking about? So cartoonish. To me, the vectors made everything look so kind of like space age. And it's really a hard game, but it's a really fun game. But Star Trek was a really, really cool looking game. And the thing, just vectors, just how they scale. They don't pixelate as opposed to rasterized images, which would be like your Mario and all that stuff. It's like, you know, they're sprites. These vectors they were built differently. Man, Atari made some great vector games. And then they also made the Red Baron. So I'm going to try to turn this into a video now about vectors, about vector games. Back in the day, like at first, that was kind of all you saw, like your Pong. I don't think Pong and those games were vector, but they kind of, just because they were so simple, they almost like sort of looked like vector. But then like Space Duel, Lunar Lander, I mean, these were hard games. These were like scientists, like literally rocket scientists were inventing these games, were creating these games. And so, you know, you'd go up in the instructions, it looked like one of those hieroglyphic scenes in a Noah Emmerich. Which one's the actor and which one's the producer that keeps blowing up the world? I mean, J.J. Abrams may blow up the Starship Enterprise every time they make a Star Trek movie. Whichever Emmerich it is, that guy blows up the whole planet over and over and over again. It's all Hollywood, right? Tail Gunner was one of the earlier games that was really cool. I liked Tail Gunner, and it had one of those the earlier joysticks. They were like the computer joysticks. They were really, really thin, and they were on a ball. Only the ones in the arcades would snap back. So Tail Gunner was really, really cool. This is also back in the day when you had things like Major Havoc. I call it Major Headache. I wonder why. I wonder why. I wonder why. And then there was the Red Baron. If you thought your life sucked as a kid, you probably played Red Baron intentionally. Now, one game that I did discover when I got into MAME was a game called Barrier. And anybody that's into Barrier, and I don't know how obscure this game is, it wasn't in any arcades that I remember or I saw. It looks like it was one of those games with an overlay, so it might have been a Vectrex game, I don't know. Tell me that Barrier is not Mattel handheld football, Mattel electronic football. You would sit in the back of the bus and you would pass that football game back and forth. I never owned one. I asked for one, I think, for 2 Christmases. Of course, in your brain, you asked for one for 27 Christmases because that's how you remember everything when you were a kid. Battlestar Galactica was what? The original, like 1970-something original. Was that 1 season or 2? To me, every Saturday night, for my entire childhood, forever, every Saturday night, you know, Dukes of Hazzard and Battlestar Galactica. And I'll probably find out that Dukes of Hazzard or Battlestar Galactica or both weren't even ever on a Saturday night. That's how you remember things. Bigger and wrong. So then you get into, to me, like the golden slice of the vector games. The ones that everybody knows about. Asteroids, Battlezone, Tempest. I love Tempest and just how clever they all were. How they made up for the lack of graphics. The lack of detail or something was kind of cool and spacey in itself. Tempest, just that little prickly little electrode thing, whatever that thing is that you are. You know, I don't know what I am there. I can't identify with that. But it's so cool, I don't care. But it was so much better than if it were a sprite, it might have had two. You know, it doesn't matter. It's a lot cooler than it would have been as a sprite. So then after, you know, you get through those sort of core games, I think, and I know my timeline might be on or off, but these are sort of like how I remember experiencing these games. So it might be my timeline in my head when I was into them or not into them. Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. I played Return of the Jedi, but that again was back to the rasterized, and I hate those Zaxxon sort of angled games where it's like either do it this way or do it this way. But when you try to do that 3D thing at some angle or something like that, I feel like a side view mirror and hello, you know, I can't, and then you just hit things all the time, or at least I did. I'm not very good at video games either. I just like them. Black Widow's a cool game. It can get a little bit repetitive. Omega Race was really cool. I liked Omega Race a lot. Omega Race reminded me of roller skating rinks when I was a kid. You run around and hope that if you're gonna run into something that it'll get the hell out of your way, or you'll somehow move it out of your way before you run into it and kill everybody in sight, which I did a lot when I went to roller skating rinks in another life back in the 70s. Star Castle was another really cool game that for me, I don't remember it coming out as early, but I think it did. Again, another one that I think it was the black and white. A lot of these initial games were just black and white games. I think Space Invaders was just a green band that they placed over the black and white monitor that was in the cabinet. And a lot of those cabinets were even reverse angle. I mean, a lot of them were mirrors, and I think they were. Anyway, I might be wrong. Or maybe that's a Mandela thing. I don't even know how long this has been going on for. 20 minutes? It feels like it's been 20 hours. Oh, that's embarrassing too. I'm boring myself. And the way you put the marks on that, listen to it. Punctuate, the way you punctuate that, it could mean I'm boring myself. I'm boring myself. I'm boring myself. Thanks for watching, and I will respond to your comments.